words about me. Good evening, friends and colleagues. Uh, I can see some of the stalwart in pediatrics. I am very happy to have you all on board today for today's discussion, which I'm sure will be very interesting for all of you. In the coming days, particularly, it will be very useful because the Articaria season, as we call it, has started with the summer from March. So I shall be sharing my presentation right now. I shall discuss about chronic urticaria. I sincerely thank the entire team of SPACT. It's a wonderful concept of Surat Pediatrician Association, of IAP Surat. Today I shall discuss about chronic urticaria in children and approach to management. We have exactly 1 hour. I have, planned in such a way that I restrict discussing or sharing my presentation for 40 odd minutes. Then for 20 minutes, I shall be most happy to take up the questions from you. So I have divided this topic under the headings of definition and example of urticaria and angioedema, then burden of chronic urticaria, then various trigger factors and pathophysiology, classification of urticaria, then diagnostic approach, and finally management. Now, articarial wheals is something which is known to all of you. It's characterized by superficial swelling, which is evanescent, doesn't remain for a long time, maximum maybe for few hours, they disappear like this. You can see giant articarial wheals like this, a huge lesion. It can be a very small lesion also. It, it doesn't spare any age group actually. It can be seen from a neonate to a very elderly octogenarian or nanogenarian also. But by and large, we see urticaria both in children, small children, or school-going children, and adult more commonly. Here you see urticaria that is a giant urticaria in a newborn, which is not a very common happening. Now coming to angioedema, angioedema is something which is of more chronic in nature as far as the individual lesion is concerned. It tends to remain for 24 to 40, to 48 to 72 hours. That is 2 to 3 days. It is swelling of the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. In urticaria, there is swelling of the dermis up to the dermis, inflammation up to the dermis. Here there is inflammation which goes deep into the dermis and involves the subcutaneous tissue or submucosal tissue. As a result, it remains swollen for a long time and tends to subside very slowly over 3 days or so. So here either subcutaneous or submucosal tissue, because angioedema often involves the mucosal area. Like this, eye is a very common area for angioedema, swelling, and often it produces, respiratory distress because of laryngeal edema. So whenever there is angioedema, you always take it as a, emergency condition, and the child needs to be treated like that. Most of the cases, I will suggest that better admit the child and then treat for medical legal issues as well as for the success of your treatment. Now, the burden of chronic urticaria we must know before embarking on chronic urticaria management. This is, first I must tell you when do you call it chronic urticaria? When there is urticaria continuously occurring for more than 6 weeks time. So that is called chronic urticaria. And, earlier we used to think even 2 decades ago that urticaria in children means this is something which is only on acute phenomena, right? We never used to think that urticaria can be chronic in children. But over last 2 decades, the concept has changed. There is a total change in the concept. We have been seeing increasing number of cases of chronic urticaria. Having said so, I must tell you the importance of it. Importance of it is that chronic use of antihistamines. Antihistamines in nowadays should not be used for urticaria in children just for few days or few weeks. It may need for many months. So that is the significance of high incidence of chronic urticaria in children. As you can see, this is the data from the 5 European countries. How does chronic urticaria, is gradually increasing all over the world. What does chronic urticaria exactly do? Chronic urticaria decreases the quality of the children very significantly, as you can see from this graph. More elaborately, chronic urticaria affects the child by more than 50%. They are not able to sleep well for weeks together, months together, sometimes years together at night. There is lack of concentration in these children because more, these children, they are either because of urticaria or because of first generation antihistaminic, which is not to be used. I shall be coming in a short while from now. That reduces the concentration in this child. That is one of the reasons why first generation antihistamine should not be chosen as a modality for treating chronic urticaria. Then 55% of these children, they cannot work normally. They cannot concentrate in their school. They cannot concentrate in their studies. Their mood undergoes irritability, mood fluctuation, and this is very common. Parents come and tell in our clinical practice. In my practice, often parents come. They say, "Doctor, the child has become very irritable over last few months because of the urticaria, because of the medication, so many other factors." I shall be coming to that in more detail. And more than 70% this either stop or reduce doing the fun things, which is the pleasure things for the child, children. So that's why they often remember their childhood when they become adult. That things sincerely that gets hampered because of chronic urticaria. Just think of the plight of a child who undergoes this chronic urticaria problem. Various trigger factors and pathophysiology. This is a very good article which was published, 11 years ago, 2010, in Pediatric Allergy and Immunology, which dealt with the identification of the etiologies of chronic urticaria. This was a prospective study of 94 children, and they came out with several factors which are responsible, etiologic factors for chronic urticaria. Let me tell you here, friends, that as compared to adults, etiology identification or elucidation is more commonly done in case of children. That means in adult, many cases you cannot identify the cause, so that's why we call it chronic idiopathic urticaria. In children also, in some patients we cannot identify the cause, but the zone or space of chronic idiopathic urticaria is much less as compared to adult. So the moment you can find the etiology, you can treat etiologically and you can give relief. So overall prognosis, as a matter of fact, is much better in cases of chronic urticaria in children as compared to that in the adults. So some of the triggering factors, which I shall be coming in more detail. Here you can see that chronic urticaria is divided into basically two groups. One is chronic spontaneous urticaria, one is chronic inducible urticaria. In chronic spontaneous urticaria, it is spontaneously they develop. There may be underlying stress, infection, or drugs responsible, but nothing which you can elicit. And chronic inducible means something which you can elicit. This is symptomatic dermographism, which you can do by doing a freak test on the forearm of the child, and you can see dermographic response. You can see cold urticaria by exposing the cold. It may be heat urticaria, it may be vibratory urticaria, contact urticaria, cholinergic urticaria after severe exercise or sweating the child or young adults they develop, or aquatic urticaria, which is extremely rare, urticaria in contact with the water. So these are called inducible urticaria because you can elicit this urticaria. Now, a very important issue, I am sure all my friends, pediatrician friends, will definitely, ask this question. And this is something which I have been repeatedly asked by many of my pediatrician colleagues and friends from not only ICH, but otherwise also, as I interact with IAP very frequently on different fora, that what is the, and parents often ask that, doctor, my child has got a vaccination due, should I go for, vaccination when he is receiving treatment for urticaria? So now here, two, three very important things. Please do, listen very carefully. That when a child's urticaria is under good control and the child is not on immunosuppressive or steroid or cyclosporine, only on antihistamines, vaccination can be given as per normal schedule. But you have to be extra careful. Tell the parents and whether the child develops urticaria within 7 days or not. Let me know. Then accordingly I shall tackle it. Second thing, some children may be having established egg allergy. I am saying this very precisely. Established egg allergy means often the parents complain of allergy to certain food items, which is actually not true. They do it on the basis of presumption, that is presumptive allergy. But when it is established after doing this oral food challenge test, even after that, it has been seen that those children who are allergic to egg can be safely immunized with viruses which are cultured on egg. So this article came in New England Journal of Medicine, friends, as you all know. This is one of the most reputed, medical journal. There are two journals, New England Journal of Medicine and Lancet. This is one of that. So this particular article is being quoted in textbooks of dermatology, and this is very, very relevant. The child may be having egg allergy, but the vaccination which is grown on egg, it does not cause allergy in most of the children, if not all. However, there are occasional reports of serum sickness like reaction to horse or rabbit's antiserum, but these are rare instances, I must tell you. Some of the rare causes of urticaria is rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, Kawasaki's disease, mastocytosis, as you know, Darier's sign, then thyroid.
Excuse me, sir.
Sir, your voice.
Unmuted. Sir. Unmute yourself, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, it automatically got muted. I don't know. So some of the rare causes of urticaria are, GRA, SLE, Kawasaki's disease, mastocytosis. As you all know, the Darier's disease can produce urticaria. Mastocytosis can produce urticaria, which is known as Darier's sign. Then, hypothyroidism, autoimmune thyroiditis. Lymphoma leukemia is much less as compared to adults. Yes, this is classical mastocytosis. These are mastocytic lesions, and when you scratch these lesions, this articulated wheel is suggestive of a Darier's sign positive. So extremely rare conditions are hereditary angioedema. I have seen only 4 cases of hereditary angioedema so far in my 30 years of practice of pediatric dermatology. Then genetic physical urticarias, metabolic diseases like familial Mediterranean fever. Only one case I have seen when I was in PGI Chandigarh way back in 1989. Then familial, Mediterranean fever and erythropoietic protoporphyria. Again, couple of cases I have seen. One in PGI and one is in Calcutta Institute of Child Health. So now coming to how urticaria is precipitated. Basically, this pivotal role or the central role is played by mast cell, and as you all know, mast cells liberates several histamine and other things which are basically mediated by cytokines, produces all the features of urticaria like pruritus, erythema, edema, and infiltrate. This is how mast cell is degranulated. High affinity Ig receptor actually triggers the degranulation of the mast cells. The Fc epsilon Ri is actually high affinity Ig receptor, which is highlighted in red, as you can see. Now, coming to most important aspect is the diagnostic approach for child with chronic urticaria. So diagnosis, approach is more or less same as in adult, but while presenting, childhood urticaria, chronic urticaria, at times I have told you how it differs from the adults. Maybe in next few minutes again, I'll keep on telling you that how urticaria in children differs from its adult counterpart. Urticaria acute means less than 6 weeks. Chronic means more than 6 weeks. Now, why often we say that chronic urticaria means more than 6 weeks. I often ask these questions to my junior. If child has been brought today with urticaria, after 4 weeks is brought with another episode of urticaria, and after 8 weeks is brought with another episode of urticaria, will you call it a chronic urticaria? So my students say, yes, sir. I say, no, there is a definition, and the actual definition is it is not a blanket statement like urticaria more than 6 weeks. 6 weeks means how frequently 6 weeks? So if there is urticarial episode twice a day for at least 3 days per week for continuously 6 weeks, then only you call it chronic urticaria. That does not there. That means chronic urticaria is not a waste paper basket. That any child presenting with urticaria today, coming after 4 weeks, another urticaria episode, another, and after 8 weeks with another episode urticaria, you will dump them into chronic urticaria. It has to have a frequency which is very specific per number of weeks per days affected, then continuously for 6 weeks, not interruptedly. 2 weeks I'm having urticaria, in between 3 weeks no urticaria, again I am having urticaria, you call it chronic urticaria. No, it has to have a definite kind of pattern. So accordingly you call it chronic urticaria. So chronic urticaria definition, friends, you have seen it is so strict. So it is either spontaneous urticaria or inducible urticaria, as I told you earlier. Now, diagnostic workup. Having said so, that chronic urticaria definition wise, it has to address some criteria. Then only it will qualify for chronic urticaria. Then you exclude various differential diagnosis. As I said to you, urticaria like things, erythema multiforme can present like, cellulitis can present like urticaria. Henoch-Schönlein purpura in the word in a child with urticarial lesion to start with as a palpable purpura, and some of the urticarial lesion look like chronic urticaria. So all these things have to be ruled out. And measurement of the chronic urticaria score, activity, impact, and control. These are extremely important. And next 5-7 minutes, I shall be talking about these all. Now, before that, as I was, telling you that Wills and angioedema are not necessarily always urticaria. That means, what are the other conditions where you can see lesions which mimic like urticaria? One is urticaria pigmentosa or mastocytosis, which I shared with you. Then urticarial vasculitis. This actually is not a type of urticaria, though the name urticaria is there. It is a vasculitis where you see urticaria-like lesion, and it tends to persist for 5 to 7 days. And if you do a biopsy of it, you will see necrotizing vasculitis or leukocytoclastic vasculitis, histopathological. Then familial cold urticaria, again it is a type of vasculitis. Non-histaminergic angioedema, again this also presents like urticaria lesions. Then syndromes which can be associated with urticaria and angioedema, these are extremely rare syndrome. Muckle-Wells syndrome, urticaria deafness, amyloidosis, sensory neural deafness. I have seen one case. Recurrent urticaria fever and arthritis. Szechuan syndrome, monoclonal gammopathy, recurrent fever, arthritis. I have never seen such case. Gliss syndrome, episodic angioedema and eosinophilia, IgM gammopathy and eosinophilia. I have seen one case. And Wells syndrome, eosinophilic cellulitis, present like urticaria. I have seen 3 to 4 cases, of which 2 cases was when I was in PGH Chandigarh, 1989 to 1995. So now coming to comorbidities of urticaria, one is autoimmunity, and as I have highlighted to you, because the child suffers for a long time, there is depression, anxiety, not only in the child, but also in the parents. There is consequences of sleep distress, sexual health, particularly in case of adults, this is applicable. Various cofactors, which are like considered as triggers factors, then components of biomarkers, predictors. Now, how to measure the activity, impact, and control? Now, urticaria activity is measured by a specific method, which is known as urticaria activity score. Then quality of life is also a measurement of importance, and how nicely the urticaria has been controlled. So there is a method of measuring that. That is called urticaria control, disease control, urticaria control score. Now, urticaria activity score, it is done depending upon the number of wheals, degree of pruritus, and other things. And 7 days score is taken. That's why it is called UAS7, as you can see. Just like scoring other diseases, just to see the therapeutic efficacy, particularly not in practice, but mostly for studies and research purpose. This is extremely important. Now, urticaria control test, as I was telling you. So as you can see, there are 4 sets of questions. how much the child has suffered because of the urticaria, how it has affected the quality of life. This is a questionnaire which is put to the parents and the older children, whether treatment was enough to control the disease, and then urticaria, how it was under treatment over last 4 weeks. Now, chronic inducible urticaria confirm the trigger of relevance, measure the trigger threshold. These are important and assess and monitor the control. This is how you should approach for such cases. Chronic inducible urticaria can be because of pressure, cholinergic factors, because of cold, I have told you earlier, heat, friction, ultraviolet light. And then how do you do cholinergic test? Cholinergic test is done either by exercise machine, bicycle, treadmill kind of thing. And when after exercise the child starts sweating, he will develop small papular eruptions. These are not exactly urticarial wheals, but itchy papular small lesions. This is called cholinergic urticaria. Or you can give a hot water bath to the child also. The child will sweat and start developing itching. Or with hot water bath, without sweating also the child can develop itching, and that is also called cholinergic urticaria. Now coming to the most important moot issue, and that is the management. Before that, before embarking on management, we must know the evolution of antihistamines, how different antihistamines have evolved over a period of time. In 1970s or before 1970s, the antihistamines were mostly hydroxyzine, which is first generation antihistamine. It's very effective antihistamine, one of the best, antipruritic antihistamine, I must say. I know that your Nelson's textbook of medicine, pediatrics, very, categorically mentions the hydroxyzine drops can be given in small children for itching. It is very useful. I also do use in my practice, but it is first generation antihistamine. Please do remember. I shall be coming to that. What are the drawbacks of first generation antihistamines? Diphenhydramine and chlorpheniramine still being used a lot for short period of time. 5 days, 7 days, maximum 2 weeks. This is what I was telling at the very beginning. The moment we say a significant percentage in various studies abroad as well as in our country, various studies in our country, Dr. Kiran Godse from DY Patil, my good friend, he is the person who has done maximum work on urticaria in Indian scenario, and he has made a name for that internationally also. So even his studies also show that urticaria in children up to 27 to 30% of chronic urticaria. So the moment we say chronic urticaria, we have to make a plan of giving long-term antihistamines, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, or even more than a year. So the moment you have a plan for long-term antihistamine, you have to look at the safety of the antihistamine, whether you can give or not. So their second generation antihistamine is chosen, not first generation. I shall tell you why it is so. Now, from 1980s, terfenadine, which subsequently was banned because of cardiotoxicity, and loratadine and activastin came into the market. Loratadine is still being used, loratadine and desloratadine. In 1990s came cetirizine, avastin, and mesolastin. Early part of 1990s, and later part of 1990s came fexofenadine. Fexofenadine is a wonderful molecule, my favorite molecule for treating urticaria, and I have been using it. I have published the largest series on chronic urticaria in adult and as well as in children. It's a combined study in our Indian Journal of Dermatology, long back, of 572 patients with absolute safety and efficacy. Then 2000 onwards came desloratadine and levocetirizine. So these are also, second generation good antihistamines which are used for chronic urticaria in children. So I shall be coming to that in a short while from now in more detail. Now, in children, we have to remember that children can tolerate, this is something which is very interesting. The children can tolerate higher doses of sedating antihistamines than adults. So I have seen, hydroxyzine hydrochloride 20 with 25 milligram, an adult is totally knocked down. And a child, 7-year-old boy, is roaming around with hydroxyzine 50 milligram a day with severe urticaria. No effect at all on sedation or anything. So children, they tolerate it extremely well. First line recommended are second generation antihistamines, as I was telling you. In adult, there is a concept of updosing. That means when with usual dose the patient is not responding, you gradually increase to twofold, to threefold, or even fourfold. In abroad, they have suggested different guidelines worldwide. They have suggested. I shall be coming to that in a short while from now. In children, this is not well documented though, but weight adjusted updosing, and according to the body weight adjusted updosing we often do in children for second generation antihistamines. And second generation antihistamines are the only medications of proven efficacy and safety in children with chronic urticaria, you have to remember. Now, various adverse effects of first generation antihistamines for which they are not chosen. Mr. Mangesh, you see there are some lines coming on the screen. Can you ask the our IT person to look into that? Why these lines, unwanted lines, are coming?
Yeah. One, phone from OnePlus. Can you remove that scribble? Ankit, can you do that?
What? Yes, sir.
Scribble from the script.
Okay, anyway, uh, I think time is very vital, and in the meantime, this will be certainly done, I'm sure. So you see, the adverse effect of the first generation antihistamines are on many organs. Most important organ is the central nervous system, where there is, you know, severe impairment of the cognition, psychomotor performance. That means it is not only the sedation. You may not have the frank sedation, but the child is not able, as I told you, a child with 50 milligram of hydroxyzine is roaming around freely, but the child is not able to concentrate in the studies. And this type of history I have got from the parents, from many teachers. They say that this particular child, doctor, was receiving antihistamines and he was not able to concentrate. The child was earlier very good at studies, but of late what has happened, I don't know, but child is not able to perform in the school. So school performance is affected. Impairment without sedation. This is very, very important. Often we tend to neglect this part because of lack of awareness amongst us. And second thing is muscarinic effect. All of us know that with strong antihistamine, first generation antihistamines, all of our mouth get dry. I'm sure that all of you must have taken some antihistamine sometime. Dry mouth, urinary retention, and sinus tachycardia. So these are common. Now for serotonin receptors, some antihistamines like cyproheptadine, which often is used by pediatrician as well as by us also for short period of time. Whenever the mother says, doctor, my child does not take proper food, he doesn't eat, we give cyproheptadine because it increases appetite. And then adrenergic actions, they causes dizziness and postural hypotension and QT prolongation as far as the cardiac toxicity is concerned. And that is the reason why terfenadine was withdrawn from the market. But fexofenadine has got nothing to do with the QT prolongation. Once upon a time, that type of question was raised, and we wrote an article in British Journal of Dermatology, 20 years ago, that it doesn't cause, after a significant study in significant number of patients, that it doesn't cause QT prolongation. So most important thing, friends, you have to remember that the first generation antihistamines can interfere with rapid eye movement, REM sleep, and impact on the learning and the performance. That is exactly what I was discussing with you, for last 3-4 minutes. Now, what are the drugs which are licensed, in different countries for the treatment of urticaria, chronic urticaria in children, right? As you can see here, bilastine, cetirizine, desloratadine, avastin, fexofenadine, levocetirizine, loratadine, megelastin, and rupatadine. Some of them are not available in our country. Now, how it is to be given? This is the guidelines which are put forth jointly by European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, in short known as YACI. Galen is German-based guide organization. Then EDF and WOW, World Allergy Organization. So these are different organizations which are working on urticaria and allergic diseases in the skin. They come up with the guideline and they say that second generation antihistamine, if adequately controlled, then you continue that. After, if there is no control or inadequate control, you increase the dose. So you can increase up to 4-fold. This is the adult guidelines, but even in children it can be applied. As I told you, weight adjusted updosing can be done. Here there is some difference in Indian criteria, Indian experts who have made the guidelines, read by Dr. Kiran Godse, and I am also a part of that Indian team of Articaria team who have made the guideline. We say that cyclosporine should come up than omalizumab. And I have personal experience with cyclosporine in good number of children for chronic urticaria, and I would like to share it with you when you ask questions during panel discussion. Now, treatment of urticaria, in short, same first line treatment of updosing, weight adjusted, as I said. Only medication with proven efficacy and safety should be used, because that is very important. And what are the drugs which are very, very important? Cetirizine, desloratadine, fexofenadine, levocetirizine, loratadine have been well studied in children, and their long-term safety has been well established in pediatric population, of which my favorite one is definitely fexofenadine and levocetirizine if needed as a second drug. If I want to give a second drug at night and daytime I want to give fexofenadine, then I will probably choose levocetirizine. But most of the time, fexofenadine twice a day is fair enough. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, friends. I think I have finished, and 37 minutes. So we have 23 minutes time for panel discussion or question answer.
So first question is from me only.
Yes, Dr. Sisodia, tell me.
So before that,
it was very kind of you to regularly interact with me on my mobile and inform me. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Sisodia is one who connected me to SPACT, apart from Dr. Digant Sastry, and of course, some others of you. Yeah, Dr. Sisodia, please.
So how frequently you use steroid for acute as well as chronic urticaria?
Right. I think this is a very, very pertinent question which has come up time and again. For acute urticaria, steroid is mostly used for, majority of the patients, but in some patients, we prefer to use adrenaline with the help of our pediatrician friends. I think you are the expert in using adrenaline, but gradually we have also become, learned from you. But for chronic urticaria, by and large, we do not use steroid for a long time. During acute exacerbation of chronic urticaria, for short period, that may be last from 5 to 10 days, we use steroid. But by that time, along with antihistamines, we give good antihistamines so that the steroid, we don't have to prolong steroid. But yes, we often use steroid during acute exacerbation. And that is the reason why now I have switched over from use of steroid to cyclosporine in a child who is having recurrent severe urticaria and not being able to control with antihistamines, or one antihistamines or two antihistamines, or weight adjusted updosing of the antihistamines. In them, I have started using cyclosporine, though the segment is very small, but they do very well, and cyclosporine is very well tolerated.
Sir, in which dose you are using cyclosporine and for how long?
Right. Cyclosporine, I prefer to avoid below 3 years of age, because of the simple reason that by 3 years, most of the vaccination schedule is complete in a child. After that, there is a long gap. So live vaccines cannot be given while the child is on cyclosporine. Keeping that in mind, I prefer to use cyclosporine in an older child, say for example 5-year, 6-year-old. And I have seen for chronic urticaria, by and large 3 to 4 months cyclosporine controls the disease very nicely. And then after that, you give a gap of 1 month for live vaccine, not to give live vaccine, and go ahead with antihistamines. So that controls the disease severity very nicely.
So there is one question. Okay. Sir. Question from Dr. Kanak Surma.
Yeah. Sir, good evening. It was a very lucid and informative talk. My question is that in neonates and infant, which antihistamines we may use for acute and the chronic urticaria?
Thank you, Dr. Kanak. I'm happy that you liked the presentation. In a neonate, actually, if you ask very honestly, as per literature, as per book, there is not a single antihistamine which is recommended in a neonate, as per book, right, or literature.
Yeah.
But as far as the practice is concerned, if you go to British Pharmacopoeia, in small babies and in 3 months old babies, cetirizine drops have been recommended. Even hydroxyzine drops are also been recommended. So in
That
a
is
small cetirizine and hydroxyzine both.
okay.
Okay. So
So
because
what in our mind is that, sir, cetirizine is only after at least 6 months. So it is not like that.
no.
Okay.
Cetirizine can be given to newborns, as well as hydroxyzine also can be given to newborns. And for the same reason, in a pregnant lady, in the second trimester or third trimester, the antihistamines are choice. One of the antihistamines is definitely fexofenadine. The other one is cetirizine.
Okay.
So there is one question from Dr. Arup Roy. So is there any, what is the role of Belastin for age above 6 years, which is recently introduced in the Indian market?
You're right.
So
Yes.
as compared to the other antihistaminic present in third generation.
Right. So, Belastin is a good molecule, but, I have also used Belastin. It is a fairly good molecule. It can control urticaria, and by and large, though Belastin, initially there was some, confusion whether it can be used in children. Nowadays, Belastin is recommended above 6 years of age, but we have very limited data. That is the main problem. We have very limited data as compared to some other antihistamines like levocetirizine, fexofenadine, desloratadine. That is, the data is huge. So as compared to other data, Belastin's data is very less, and that's why, as of now, if you ask me, I will be a bit hesitant to use Belastin, because I don't have enough literature support for me to stand my case in case there is any serious adverse effect occurs to a child and I am dragged to the court of law. So we must remember, whatever we prescribe, there should be enough literature in a published journal or in book to support your advocacy of a particular molecule. So when you don't have, better you wait for some time and let the literature grow. Then only you give that drug so that you can justify yourself. That is very, very important, because we often say it is important to save the patient's skin, here the children's skin, but it is also important to save our own skin.
So there is a question from Dr. Digant Shastri, sir. Digant, sir.
Yeah. So you said about the management part, but can you give some information about the diagnostic algorithm for chronic urticaria? How should we proceed? And many times patients come with a suggestion that, sir, should we get the skin test, allergy testing done? So what should be the diagnostic approach?
Right. I think this is a very relevant question Dr. Digant has asked, and this is very practical in day-to-day practice. The parents often come with a child with chronic urticaria with a big file, and where you see a lot of tests being done. Specific IG is being done, prick test being done, serum IG done, food allergies being done. These are very, very, common things in practice. Most important thing is to tell the parents first. This is the way I do. I tell them that, look, this type of allergy testing has got very little practical relevance. That is first, because if your blood is also taken and tested for allergy, 10 food items will definitely come positive as allergy. That is number one. And number two, I tell them, look, after this, you must have omitted all these food items. They say, yes, doctor. Have you got any benefit? No, doctor. So that what does that mean? That means it is not useful. This food allergy, so-called positivity, does not mean anything. So then they are convinced. Then I tell them, the most important thing is oral food challenge. That means this is being done by Hugh Simpson, is the father of diet and allergy in the world. He works in Mount Sinai Institute in New York, and he has done maximum work on food allergy. and food-induced allergy, whether urticaria or atopic dermatitis. So he says never more than 3 food items a child should be allergic to. So so-called 5-7 items what we stop arbitrarily, that is not right, particularly in a growing child where undernutrition and malnutrition is a major problem in our country rather than the allergy. This is number one. And number two is that these 3 or 4, I asked the mother to suspect to put in a small urticaria diary, as we call it, 3 or 4 food items which she has seen herself after giving there is some temporal correlation. Then those 4, out of those 4 food items, I asked the mother to give 1 food item. Suppose fish. I asked the mother to give, suppose it is sea fish. It will give sea fish and see for 3 days whether the child develops urticaria. Not only urticaria, pain abdomen, bronchospasm, diarrhea, or any or arterial lesion. So it can manifest in many ways, not only skin lesions but also GI or respiratory. So 3 days, no, nothing happens. Again, I give a gap of 4 days. I tell again give the same sheefies and don't give other 3 items in the meantime. Suppose there is a list of 4 items. One is sheefies, one is egg, one is brinjal, and fourth is suppose milk. So don't give other 3. Then again try it. Again see it is not there. Urticaria has not appeared. No, none of the other symptoms appear. So likewise thrice you do. If on 3 occasions the child after ingestion of a particular food item which is in the suspected list doesn't develop any of the allergic symptoms, then you can be 100% sure the child is not allergic to that food item. That means negative predictive value is much more important than the positive predictive value. Similarly, do with the other food item. So 4 food items, if you have to taste, it should not take maximum more than 4 months time. So this is much more conclusive than prick test or specific allergy test, which is in vivo applicability is only 20%. And oral food challenge is more than 90% is applicable.
So there is one question from Dr. Manish Sharma. So we are encountering lots of patients with urticaria during the infection. Whenever comes patient with the fever and urticaria simultaneously. So I mean urticaria with the fever. So in that case, how will you approach?
Yes.
Because pathogen is mostly viral in that cases or sometimes bacterial.
Absolutely. You are dot on it, Dr. Sisodia. This is something which we do not see in adult. Urticaria with fever is more or less a domain monopolized by the children, right? A child comes with fever and urticaria, and mostly this is viral infection, sometimes bacterial infection. And these urticarias are almost always acute urticaria. They are never chronic urticaria, except very rare types like familial Mediterranean fever. This is extremely rare. But by and large, I have seen many children who have come with urticaria. I am treating them with urticaria on the day 1, day 2, have not asked for any investigation. On day 3, I have seen sitting in the Institute of Children's OPD. At day 3, I saw the child has come up with frank varicella. That means chicken pox. So which manifested first as urticaria. This is not one. At least 5 or 6 such children I have seen who came with urticaria lesion. Then subsequently they developed chicken pox. Similarly with other things also, like herpes, or somebody developed staphylococcal scarlet skin syndrome, or somebody developed toxic shock syndrome. So these are mostly acute urticaria. You treat the child, but at the same time you investigate the cause of fever in this child.
So basically we need to treat the primary cause, and as when needed you can give antihistaminic.
Yes, absolutely.
I have one question.
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes.
Sir, in many times, even after extensive history, we do not find any cause or any trigger of urticaria. So in that case, should we continue treating the child with antibiotics for a longer time, or we should insist to find out the cause? Because their medications are to be given for more the months. So is it justifiable without any trigger or any identified trigger or cause?
Yes, that is exactly what the recommendation worldwide is, and that is exactly what the IACI, Galen, and other guidelines, World Allergy Organization says, and as well as the Indian Urticaria Forum also says. that in approximately 20 to 25% of the cases of childhood urticaria, which is much bigger in adult. In adult, it is more than 60% of the cases you do not find any cause. We call it chronic, idiopathic urticaria. And nowadays we are calling, because of autoimmune nature of this entity, we call it chronic autoimmune urticaria, CAU. Earlier we used to call it CIU, chronic idiopathic urticaria. So these type of children best to be treated with long-term antihistamines, and this is to be told to the parents too very clearly. And I have got more than 1,000 such children over last 10 years. Many of them have got completely cured also with long-term antihistamine, and that's why I talk so much about second generation antihistamines, which you can give very safely for more than 6, 7, 8 months, or more than 1 year, even more than 1.5 years, 2 years, or even in some children 3 years. And you do not, most importantly, you do not need to do repeated blood tests. Only baseline you do a CBC and LFT and urine RE. Many a times, as Dr. Sisodia mentioned, that fever may precipitate urticaria. Urinary tract infection I have seen in children, a very common cause of presenting with acute urticaria. So baseline test, and then since you are giving antihistamines, though it is not in the guidelines, I have always said that since the child is receiving something which is metabolized in the liver, it is a good idea to save your own skin, that you do a repeat liver function test after 3 months and after 6 months and after 1 year, like that. So I have seen all of us, all of pediatric dermatologists who are practicing in India, we have never seen that there is any problem with long-term antihistaminic any child, for that matter, when it is properly selected, judiciously selected. Second generation antihistamine I am talking about, not the first generation, which definitely clouds the higher function of the child. And as I told you, the mother and particularly the mother, parents complain the child is not able to concentrate, child has become irritable. All these happens when this first generation antihistamine is chosen. First generation antihistamines are very good during acute episode. During acute episode, you give steroid, you give first generation antihistamine, you give in conjunction with second generation. But subsequently, you continue with second generation antihistamine, and that you can safely give for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Absolutely no problem.
So in that case, is it advisable to combine two antihistamines to reduce the toxicity rather than giving the one only? Is it
Right.
possible?
There are two, school of people actually internationally, Dr. Rakesh. One group believes that one antihistamine is giving twice, that is the, updosing, it works better. However, another group, they believe that daytime you give non-sedating, nighttime you give sedating. If you ask me what I do in my practice, I'll tell you very, honestly, that I prefer giving a good dose of fexofenadine during daytime, and nighttime, cetirizine or levocetirizine. So that works very well for most of my patients, if not all. And in some patients in whom they do not work, because I know that sedating, because levocetirizine and cetirizine, though we call them non-sedating, but I'm sure you will agree with me, they cause good amount of sedation.
Yeah.
Right? And that sedation is very useful for the child to sleep at night, not only for the child, but for the parents also to sleep at night. Otherwise, the parents nowadays, most of the parents both the parents are working. And the first thing they say, doctor, I am, not able to sleep because my child is not able to sleep. How can I sleep? And next day I have to go to the office. And my wife also has to go to the office. So the urticaria is not only the problem of a child, it is the problem of the entire family, I always say, right? So that's why this type of practice has always helped me. And as far as the food restriction is concerned, I have got a very strong, personal view, and I have debated this against those who believe in strong food restriction. I say few things, like without any very documentation, evidence, how can you restrict food? That is number one. Number two, in a growing child, restricting food means most of the food items you will see which are restricted, they are very proteinaceous food, high protein rich food. In a growing child, for the growth and development, they're extremely important. Third, in a family, Indian family, suppose in a non-vegetarian family, a child is having a prawn or egg or crab, the child cannot take that. His sibling, do you think the sibling or the parents will be able to take? You are restricting milk or you are not giving ice cream to the child. Do you think another sibling will be able to take? And how long? For how many months? They will avoid ice cream. A small child, you are not giving ice cream just on the basis of presumption. I think that is something is not to be done.
So next question is what you have asked to your junior fellow, that first year resident, that the patient come with urticaria again after a 2 month and again after 3 months and 6 months. So how will you treat this patient? Which category they fall? They doesn't fall in the acute category. They even doesn't fit to the chronic category. So is it like a recurrent category?
Yes.
So which
Yes.
category and how will you treat that patient?
Yes. Yes. This is called actually this is a very peculiar type of urticaria, and this is also seen in approximately 5 to 10% of the cases, though not very common. But child is brought or even adult comes with urticaria day one. After 3 weeks comes another episode of urticaria. After 6 weeks comes another episode. This is chronic recurrent urticaria actually. We call it chronic recurrent urticaria. We do not call it chronic urticaria. As per criteria or as per definition, they do not fit into the chronic urticaria, but chronic recurrent urticaria. These patients should also be treated with just like chronic urticaria, not on the basis just like your feeding schedule. One is demand schedule and one is fixed schedule. So this should go not on demand schedule. Whenever there is urticaria, you treat, and rest of the time you forget. No, that means there is some amount of histamine being liberated into the system, which is causing urticaria with some other cofactors, environmental factors, maybe infection, maybe stress and anxiety and other factors. So it is better to treat these children with a drug which is extremely safe for long-term purpose. You suppose you plan for 4 months treatment with fexofenadine during daytime, or levocetrizine along with levocetrizine at night time, or only fexofenadine during daytime is able to control the disease. Better go for that. We treat like that.
So recurrent urticaria should be treated as the protocol of the chronic urticaria.
Chronic urticaria, absolutely.
Sir, there is one question from our senior pediatrician, Dr. Rajesh Bhai. So is there any role of ranitidine, H1 blocker? We are talking about the H2. Now what about H1?
Yes. No, I think Dr. Rajesh Bhai has asked something which used to be considered, because he's very senior, used to be there in the textbook earlier. Even in our standard textbook of dermatology, for chronic urticaria or acute chronic urticaria, you add H2 blocker. But with this, the concept was basically this was for actually acute urticaria. During acute urticaria, there is huge amount of liberation of histamine, and that causes increased gastric HCl, and invariably a child or adult with acute urticaria will have pain abdomen. So to combat that gastric HCl, ranitidine was introduced. But for chronic urticaria, it has been started, and now in the guidelines, it is very promptly mentioned, very clearly mentioned, that H2 blocker has got nothing to do in the treatment of urticaria as such, because these H2 receptors in the skin, they do not exist. So you can't do anything by giving ranitidine to control urticaria. It is basically was acute urticaria related gastric symptom which ranitidine used to control.
Sir, one of the pediatrician whose daughter is 9 years and she is suffering from urticaria, which is giant one. It would be once a year, mostly in the month of September to December. She is given with the Allegra, like fexofenadine, ranitidine, as well as hydroxyzine, and omnacortil even started. So is it right every time to start, and what are the trigger factors specifically to September to December month?
Right. I think this, this girl, needs to be evaluated and investigated for atopic diathesis. Must be atopic. Her IG needs to be done. History must be taken about the personal history of allergic rhinitis or in the parents' history of, atopy. And a particular seasonal type of urticaria, which we see quite often, mostly it is in atopic children. And this children's IG is mostly high most of the time. And during urticaria, you treat them for these 3 months. I would suggest, if it has been occurring for number of years, in this year, September, you start with cyclosporin, and you give cyclosporin for 4 months. You see there will be very good response along with suppose fexofenadine, and next year also you give it. I have done that, and after 3 years you will see it has stopped coming, it has ceased to come, right? So I personally believe this immunomodulator, they modulates the immunity in such a way that this changes the natural course of the disease.
Uh, Sir, is there any role of Montelukast in the treatment of urticaria?
Montelukast, by and large, when it again associated with seasonal allergic rhinitis, suppose an atopic child, it has got a role in urticaria. Otherwise, Montelukast has got a role in urticaria when urticaria is precipitated by NSAIDs, particularly aspirin and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. There, Montelukast has got a role. But otherwise, even in general urticaria, Montelukast is not useful like ranitidine.
Sir, one question is from the Kanak Surma. So, what minimum age we can start the fexofenadine?
Fexofenadine syrup you can start from 6 months. It is USFDA approved from 6 months above.
Okay, sir. So, in older time, we had seen that some of the injections are given to the patient who comes with the recurrent urticaria. So, is such injections like old times?
Histoglobin and other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That time I must say that two terminologies and two concepts in medicine has revolutionized our treatment. And and we are all guided by medico legal rules, but two factors, two important terminologies. One is evidence based practice of medicine, and second thing is quality of life. So we never nowadays talk about the cure of the disease, we talk whether the quality of the life of the child has improved or not. I think this histoglobin and other things are the treatment modalities of the yesteryears, where there was hardly any evidence that it works. There is no published literature. I have never found any published data about this. And neither there is any is combining this, has got a scientific validity to justify its use. I think mostly they used to work as a placebo, because this injection concept is a placebo. It works in many people. Oh, those people, they will come to you mostly in the hospital OPD. I know mostly for the adult patients, but for children also. Doctor साहब सुई डाल दो, वो बीमारी खत्म हो जाएगा. So this type of people, सुई डालने वाला people, whatever oral medicine you give, they won't work, because in their mindset that sui is there. So unless and until you give injections, and these are the patients where psychological factor dominates in the causation of urticaria, and unless and until that you take care, you won't be able to control urticaria.
Sir, patients comes to the emergency department with acute severe urticaria. So, which is the choice of injectable medication for you? So, like adrenaline, steroid, or IV antihistaminic, which is the choice of drug?
Right. Antihistaminic, I will never use IV. First of all, adrenaline should be the treatment of choice. That is the best treatment for acute urticaria. It controls the angioedema also, and second option will be definitely steroid, an IV steroid, a hydrocortisone, a quick-acting steroid. So that will be the second. But subsequently, I will switch over to oral, because injectable is not required for long time unless the child is continuing to have the urticaria in spite of adrenaline or steroid. That type of children should be admitted in the hospital.
So in the adult, they used to give antihistaminic IV, but IV antihistaminic sometimes may give with the severe hypotension in the patient, and patient may collapse sometimes.
Absolutely.
Not
Absolutely.
advisable.
Absolutely. IV antihistamine should never be given, because they can cause cardiac arrhythmia. That is number one. They can cause severe hypotension. So better to avoid IV antihistamine. If at all antihistaminic is parenterally given, it is always intramuscular injection.
Sir, in older times, as we have seen the histoglobin injection, there are other medications also which are used to give when patient comes for second time or first time for the urticaria other than antihistaminic. So like albendazole, sometimes they used to give metronidazole also. So is there any role or is there any science process now? These are not the concept, but is
Yes.
there any usefulness?
Yes, I'll tell you. There are two studies when I was a resident in PGI, which were carried out. Both the studies as part of my, colleague's thesis. One was role of helminthiasis in chronic urticaria in children. And the conclusion of the thesis was that helminthiasis has got no role in chronic urticaria in children. If at all, in acute urticaria, in some children it can have, but with documented examination of stool for oviparasite and cyst on 6 occasions, if you find, then you justify to give albendazole 1 course. Otherwise, please don't give albendazole to every child having urticaria. I think albendazole is one of the drug which can cause urticaria. So you can, you can land in trouble. That is number one. And number two studies, which you asked about the metronidazole, the second study was role of vaginal moniliasis and giardiasis for chronic urticaria in adult females. In that study also, the conclusion was there is absolutely no role. It is that just anecdotal cases, some cases of some females I have also seen that the urticaria is not subsiding. You give them, metronidazole with the diagnosis of vaginal giardiasis, vaginal moniliasis, or vaginitis. So they respond.
So blindly, you should not give albendazole as well as the metronidazole to the patients of acute or chronic urticaria unless and
Yes.
until you find any evidence of the infection.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here again, I must say one thing, that this is my personal observation, which I wanted to share with you. This is just few cases, maybe 5-6 cases I have seen. This, young adult mostly, or some children, the urticaria is not responding with antihistamines, again coming and going. Just for the sake of investigation, I asked for vitamin D deficiency. They came with very severe vitamin D deficiency. And though we often talk with bit of humor that everything is vitamin D deficiency, but at least in my practice I have seen 5 to 7 patients when vitamin supplementation was given, those who were not earlier responding to antihistamine, they responded very well to the point they got completely cured. So in some cases of chronic urticaria where you do not find any clue, along with the other blood test, which I enumerated earlier, it is worthwhile to estimate the 25 hydroxy vitamin D level in their blood.
Sir, at which point of time pediatrician need the refer patient to the dermatologist? So pediatrician can start cyclosporin by themselves, and if they start, what are the points you need to highlight that the which should be taken care while starting the cyclosporin?
I think a pediatrician should treat mostly acute urticaria because they are the expert, and they are more conversant with systemic complications of acute urticaria. Chronic urticaria patients should be referred to a pediatric dermatologist best, or if not available, then sent to a dermatologist better. And the decision to start cyclosporin in a child with chronic urticaria is better to be left for the dermatologist.
So if patients come with a recurrent urticaria or long-term chronic urticaria, long-term urticaria which does not fall in the category of the chronic urticaria, a patient required to do a blood test. So which blood test you will advise and what are the importance related to that?
Right. In such cases, I will always advise a routine CBC, LFT. But apart from that, something which are of importance is IgE. I shall definitely like to look at the atopic nature of the child. And fourth thing is, as I said, vitamin D, why the child is developing, whether has got gross vitamin deficiency. If it is continuing for months together, definitely I shall ask for a serum, ANA level. because as I highlighted, collagen vascular disease many a times can manifest as urticaria, which is called autoimmune urticaria. So these are the things which I would like to look at.
So high serum Ig level, how it reflect, how it manipulate the treatment part.
By and large, if the serum Ig is very high, that means the child is very strongly atopic. That is only one thing which is strongly suggests, and it also suggests that serum Ig is something which cannot be manipulated by antihistamine. You need to give some immunomodulators, and obviously the question of starting cyclosporine.
Thank you, sir.